President Lula, welcome to the program.
É prazer imenso, Cristiano.
It's a great pleasure. It's an immense pleasure for me to participate in this discussion.
You came and gave a big speech this past week, and you have said that you're 75 years old, but the words give up do not exist in my vocabulary, and you think you have the energy of a 30-year-old. So, are you considering another run for the presidency in your country?
I believe, Christian, that this is not a major issue that we should discuss today in Brazil. In Brazil today, we have to discuss the survival of our people. We have a lot of unemployed people. We have a lot of people that are starving or in hunger. During my administration, we had ended with hunger in Brazil, recognized by the UN, and unfortunately, the lack of responsibility of those that are in the administration today, which is very similar to what Trump did in the US, is leading Brazil to great impoverishment, and it's taking Brazil also to be a victim and be the epicenter of the COVID-19 around the world. It's a great shame. During my government, Brazil was the 6th largest economy in the world, and now we went down in the ranking to the 12th largest economy of the world. We'll discuss my candidacy for the presidency when it comes to the time, but now we have to discuss the survival of 210 million Brazilians.
You have also called President Bolsonaro imbecilic. You've called him a moron. What would you do differently, and how would you do it in terms of COVID, for instance?
Well, first of all, COVID started to have a mistaken treatment here in Brazil, almost around the world too, and also in the US with President Trump. The lack of responsibility was tremendous. The president did not believe in the effects and the strength and force of the virus. He thought it was just a flu, and he thought that the people didn't have to use masks. A good administration would have created a scientific committee, with the governors, and with the committee with health heads of health departments to have a national protocol. And now we reach almost 3,000 deaths a day. So this is a disease that there's no control in Brazil. The governors are making a tremendous endeavor, but the mayors are taking a lot of efforts, but the president of the republic lacks responsibility, and he's even prescribing medicine that doesn't work, that no one believes in. He doesn't behave himself as a president that is concerned with the health of the care of the people. Now Brazil is a rogue country, and unfortunately, our government does not respect anyone, and that's why no one respects Brazil today.
Let me ask you, because the WHO have warned that what's happening with COVID in your country could actually affect the rest of the world. Let me just read you this from Director General Tedros. If Brazil is not serious, it will continue to affect all the neighborhood there and beyond.
It is very important for the American people to know that our country is a country that had an extraordinary healthcare system, which is a national health system, and that was very good, but now it's in a very bad shape. It's very important also to remember that Brazil, during the H1N1 flu, in 3 months, Brazil vaccinated 83 million people. So Brazil has the largest vaccination program in the world. But what happened is that in the last years, Christian, that ended. They destroyed this national health system. They withdrew budget from the national health system, and they ended with the vaccination system that we have. So what do I think now today, Christian? I believe that the world is lacking leadership. I believe that in this moment, in the same way when there was the breakdown of the Lehman Brothers Bank, at the G20, we created the G20 gathering, and we started discussing international economics. The UN should have already called for an extraordinary general assembly or virtual assembly to discuss COVID-19. President Biden could call a G20 extraordinary meeting and how to produce the vaccines and how to transform the vaccines in a public good. So the people, regardless of the amount of money that the country may have, that they could receive the vaccines. And this vaccine, we would pay back that vaccine after we end with the virus. And after we win that war, that's how it happened with the US in the Second World War. Everyone is thinking by themselves. We're 7 billion in the earth, and we're producing 2 billion vaccines, which means that there's 5 billion human beings that will have no vaccine. And so it is the responsibility of all the countries in the world, including Brazil, to take responsibility to produce vaccine for its own people and for those peoples that cannot purchase, could not buy, that poor country that cannot afford to buy. So that's why there is a way out. What it's necessary is the politicians to take responsibility.
Mr. President, as you know, only about 4.6% of Brazilians have been vaccinated. President Bolsonaro has, as you say, dismissed many of the scientific facts, many of the concerns, also no lockdown, no social distancing. And he has been very concerned about one thing, and that is the economy. This is what he said last week.
Até quando?
How long will our economy resist? If it collapses, it will be a disgrace. What will we have soon? Supermarket invasions, buses on fire, strikes, pickets, work stoppages.
Now your central bank is saying that actually the economy is surging. Can you address what Bolsonaro is saying about having to protect the economy?
Christian, if President Bolsonaro was telling the truth, the first thing that he would do to recover the economy was to guarantee vaccines for all the Brazilian people, because the only guarantee that the people have to survive to the COVID-19 attacks is vaccination. And so we don't have vaccines for everybody. He replaced 3 health ministers in 1 year, and he put a general that understood about logistics in the army, but didn't understand anything about healthcare issues to be the health minister. In Brazil, we have a lot of quality with great competence. We have many doctors that could be health ministers. He didn't listen to anybody. He prefers to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, tell his lies through his mobile phone, through the social media. And we've been producing fake news as we've never seen in the history of Brazil, and he's not dealing seriously. I believe that if the president of the republic wants to speak seriously about the economy, we'd have changed our monetary base and put aside money for healthcare and a part of our budget to fund small and medium-sized enterprises, and part of the money to investments in infrastructure works that could create jobs.
President Lula, I need to ask you about the recent Supreme Court justice who annulled on a technicality throughout the conviction and the case. And I wonder what you feel about that, and especially whether you think that it will go to court again, go to trial again. Do you think you will be convicted again?
Well, Christian, I have no issue if I'm going to be judged again or trial again. What I'm saying to you is that what happened in my case was the greatest judicial farce in the history of 500 years of Brazil. And this was said by one of the justices, Gilmar Mendes of the Brazilian Supreme Court. And I've been saying, pleading for my innocence, I've been saying all the time that the Judge Moro was a liar, former Judge Moro, and part of the public prosecutors, they organized a gang to take over and attack Petrobras, the state oil company, and together with some U.S. prosecutors. I'm not inventing this. This was all on recording. We have the recordings of the prosecutors discussing with the judge, Mike Kuss, and with Swiss and U.S. DOJ prosecutors. So I'm very comfortable that the ruling of Justice Fachin, he annulled everything.
I just need to follow up, because although they did annul your conviction, the justice did not reject the evidence that was collected during the investigation that led to your conviction. And the Brazilian people, by huge margins, have had enough of corruption. Is that what Brazilians have to look forward to forever? What is going to stop the endemic political corruption and economic corruption in your country?
Veja, a gente não pode confundir o
Well,
combate à corrupção.
we cannot mix to fight corruption that we have to fight and with what was done in a political way to destroy my image and to destroy the image of my party. And so, Christian, there's only one Brazilian that in this moment wants to know the truth and only the truth. It's me. I have my consciousness. I'm so comfortable with my consciousness, and I have so much certainty. I have so much certainty about me that I want the truth above anything and more than any other human being, the planet Earth, because I know that declaring my innocence and the truth that I know will come up, will emerge, is the guilt of a judge that was irresponsible and part of the prosecutor's office that created a gang to destroy the state oil company Petrobras and to destroy my image. So for me, I believe that we only end with corruption in Brazil when we end with the corruption, not committing the same crime that the others did. And that includes the prosecutor's office.
President Lula, when you were in office, President Barack Obama called you the most popular politician on earth. You, of course, are famous for having raised millions of Brazilians out of extreme poverty and having put a social welfare net for people. You're also the first left-wing president to have completed your terms after decades of military right-wing rule in your country. But you are a very, very polarizing figure. The health minister who was fired by Bolsonaro, Mandetta, he told me this week that it would be bad for Brazil to have either you or Bolsonaro in office. Listen to what he told me.
It's a threat to Brazil because they're both extremes, one on the left hand and one on the extreme right hand. So they do the same mistakes and they both bring people to really complain on each other. Hate is their fuel. I don't know who would win, but for sure Brazil would lose.
Sabe qual é o comentário?
You know what is my comment, Christian? Is that Mandetta maybe can understand about healthcare, but in politics he doesn't understand anything. I'm not a new politician. I've been in the trade union movement since 1975. I'm a person that I've ran since 1989, and I lost 3 presidential elections. I've never been a radical. You can't call me a left-wing or a right-winger. The other day they asked me if I'm a communist, and I responded, I'm a lathe operator. I'm a worker that understood that politics was important and that the working people should participate in politics. And that's why I founded a party. Brazil experienced during the Workers' Party administration, the best administration in its history. The growth of the GDP, of the salaries going up, and the rising of the very poor, racial equality. We invested in the most miserable people, poorest people. 40 million people were lifted to middle class, and 36 million were lifted from extreme poverty. 70 million Brazilians opened new bank accounts. And so we developed one of the highest social inclusion programs in the world. I don't know if you know, Christian, because I don't have a university degree, and I was the president that opened more universities in our country, federal public, and puts more students in the university in Brazil than any other president in the history of Brazil. When I left the presidency after 8 years in 2 terms, I had 87% of the polls of support for my administration.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you one more time, because you're clearly very passionate about your country and about your record, as you say, lifting so many Brazilians out of poverty. Would you consider a run again for president? Are you thinking about the possibility? I'm not asking you to give me a yes or no firmly, but is it something that you will consider?
Cristiano, deixa eu te dizer uma coisa.
Christian, let me tell you something. When I saw Biden being elected, I thought, he's 77. I still have 75. And I say every day that I have 75 years of age, but the energy and power of 30. So when it comes to the moment to run for the elections, and if my party and the other allied parties understand that I could be the candidate, and if I'm well in my health, with the energy and power that I have today, I can reassure you that I will not deny that invitation. But I don't want to talk about that. That's not my main priority. My main priority now is to save this country. We need to create jobs urgently. The economy has to go back to grow, and we need to vaccinate our society. I should say, and I know that the US has vaccines in a surplus and that they're not going to use all that vaccine. And maybe that vaccine, who knows, could be donated to Brazil or to other countries, even poorer than Brazil, that cannot afford to buy the vaccine. So one suggestion that I would like to make to President Biden through your program is it's very important to call a G20 meeting urgently. It's important to call the main leaders of the world and put around the table just one theme, one issue: vaccine, vaccine, and vaccine. This is even worse than the Second World War or the First World War. If we're not careful, we'll be killing more people will be dying than in the Second World War. So the responsibility of the international leaders is tremendous. So I'm asking to President Biden to do that, because I don't believe in my government. And so I couldn't ask for that for Trump, but Biden is a breath for democracy in the world. And so Biden could play this historical role to take the responsibility as the largest economy of the world to call the Indians, the Chinese, Europeans, everybody, and let's take action together against the COVID. Let's defeat COVID as we defeated the Nazis in the Second World War. This is what has to be done now, and urgently.
I want to ask you about one last existential matter that even after COVID will plague this planet and its civilization, which Biden has already also made a priority, and that is the climate crisis. Deforestation in the Amazon has surged massively under this president, and he doesn't seem to take the climate emergency. Bolsonaro doesn't take it seriously. What needs to be done in your country right now to protect your country, to protect the indigenous people and the climate for your area and biodiversity for all of us?
Olha, o Bolsonaro
Well,
efetivamente
Bolsonaro effectively does not represent Brazil when we're talking about climate change. The only thing that Bolsonaro understands is to take care of his militiamen and to incentive people to buy guns. The rainforest in the Amazon is a cultural heritage of humanity under Brazilian sovereignty. So Brazil is the owner of the Amazon, but the fact that it's part of Brazil is not an impediment that we should participate in international agreements to conserve the Amazon rainforest for with the rest of the world. We don't need gold prospectors or loggers in the rainforest. We don't need that. Brazil needs to guarantee to the people that live in the rainforest in the Amazon that they can work in an environmental setting that is sustainable, that will not cause destruction, so the Amazon could even receive, through the Brazilian government, incentives. Now, it's very important for us that we have to make it clear in Brazil that this is Bolsonaro, and you can be sure, I can reassure you that there's a lot of people here in Brazil that are fighting to advocate and defend the rainforest in the Amazon, and that's why we need to call to re-elect someone that has the mindset that is different from Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro is an evil for the Brazilian democracy, he's an evil for the economy, for democracy, for education, and for peace. He's an evil in all these issues. And so we cannot continue with this man ruling our country.
So let me just ask you then, do you regret your policies and the policies of the Workers' Party when you took a developmental, approach to the Amazon occasionally, especially with the Belo Monte Dam? It had huge negative environmental impact.
I will be criticized because I should have built a lake for the dam in Belo Monte because the people thought I was going to generate electrical power with that. But I made all the agreements with all the indigenous people, with the people that live side by side the river. One day you come to Brazil, Christiane, and whatever I'm busy, I will leave aside and I'll travel with you to Belo Monte in the Amazon, so you'll see with your own eyes what happened there.
President Lula da Silva, thank you very much for joining me.
Obrigado, Cristiane.
Thank you very much, Christiane.